Can we use gaming to learn more about the world? Hey guys, thank you so much and welcome to the Game Your Future podcast. I'm Daniel and I am joined today by Lorena Tomasini, who is helping individuals and businesses with life and health insurance and is also a podcast host herself of 12 Minute Talk. So thank you so much and welcome, Lorena. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be hopefully a very interesting conversation today.
Absolutely. So we're talking, so you do work with life and health insurance. Right. And you've also been a gamer, at least in the past, right? So tell me about that.
I guess, like I don't consider myself a gamer as modern games. Growing up, I did play Super Mario Brothers and like Super Nintendo. And I just remember like the first time I beat Super Mario, like the original one. It was like, wow, what an accomplishment, because back then you couldn't save the games like now, right?
No,
You can
yeah.
save every little thing, and right. So or
That's
like the Nintendo would freeze, so you had to like blow the cartridge, right?
it would freeze and
um
glitch. Yep.
yeah, so I would say that that's my experience with gaming, and it's always fun to play those games even today.
That's
Mhm.
fantastic. Yeah, because love the old school side of it too, because you're right. There were no save points, right? It was just you had to beat it all there in one sitting, basically.
Yeah.
And because you're right, the modern
Yeah.
games just have so much in terms of checkpoints or save points or whatever, what have you. So it's really interesting that kind of this old school mentality. And then so that's what you did kind of like for the fun and enjoyment growing up, and I love that. And then you went into you said life insurance or life
Mhm.
and health insurance. So
Yeah.
I guess tell us a little bit more about like kind of that journey and what you're doing to help now.
Yeah, so I would say insurance, we sometimes get a bad reputation. People think like, oh, you're just trying to sell me something, right? But at the end of the day, it's really lack of education maybe for consumers on what these products actually are and how they protect them. Because really, insurance at the end of the day is transferring that risk from yourself to insurance companies, right? Whether it's life insurance, we think about it like, oh, if I die, okay, yeah, my family or my business gets money to continue paying for things. And then health insurance, if I have a medical emergency, it'll help me pay for those bills, right? But I think there's a lot of interesting ways that we can use insurance that maybe we don't know about, or we see TikTok videos, right, saying like, oh, become your own banking, but like they don't really explain what that is, or how that works. So I think a lot of it is just educating consumers about how these products are, and what they can do for them. I always say like sometimes the most important conversation you could have is with an insurance agent, because it could be the difference between your family being able to continue paying for their mortgage or their bills if something happens to you, whether that's passing away or that's having, God forbid, something like cancer, heart attack, or stroke. A lot of times people survive these things, but financially they're left devastated. So that's all with like life insurance. It's really important to have those conversations. Mhm.
Gotcha. So I think that is really important because I think as gamers, we're much more big on like I guess risk taking, right? Like
Mhm.
because we like to push the envelope of our games, right? And we just like to push and see where all the interesting and fun secrets are. So we
Yeah.
get out into the world and we like to explore and do lots of things. And so we're not necessarily worried, right, about like what happens if something, should something happen, right? If we
Yeah.
fail, if heaven forbid, we get sick, we get, or all of it, loss of life, right? That's not even in our thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I guess, how would you kind of, ground that to say like, well,
Yeah, I would
what
say,
happens?
like in video games, you have, I don't know, depending on the game, like a thing that you can drink, and right, it'll give you restore your health, or you get extra lives, right? I'm not sure if that still works today. You have to
Oh
pay
yeah.
for that, right? Right? Or like you upgrade your armor, right, to like be able to beat certain levels, I
Yep.
imagine. depending what you're playing on. And I would say insurance is kind of like this, right? Like you're walking through life with nothing, and now you say, "Oh, you know what? I got this life insurance through my work, and now I have a family, so let me upgrade and not just have something through work, but have something personal, so that way I know that my family is protected, right? And I add, I don't know, critical illness, and I add dental. So all these things are like upgrades to protecting your finances, right? Because just like in video games, you need money, or like fake money, right, to buy these additional things. Well, in life, you also depend on your ability to work in order to continue paying all these things. So I would look at it like that. Like insurance is kind of like buying upgrades, so that when you need it, you know that okay, nothing's going to happen. I don't need to restart the video game to play.
Right. So I think in this kind of analogy, you're saying because I think life happens, right? And so and you can't really predict
Yeah.
what's going to happen all the time. So I think in this kind of analogy, like maybe life kind of hits you in different ways, right? And that's like a saying, right? Like, oh, life comes at you all sorts of different ways. So I think in this analogy, you're saying like, if we put it in video game terms, right? Life is kind of the kind of force that is maybe even attacking you at the time, right? Because with just random events that happen that, something comes at you
Yeah.
and you're going to take damage.
Right.
Most likely, it may be physical, but it could be financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying is that having this kind of life insurance is that kind of armor to say like, okay, it's going to hit me and do financial damage, but I'm protected, or at least can reduce that damage in a way.
For sure. It's like like in Super Mario, where like you could get like the flute, and then like you would fly to like a different world to
Yeah.
like advance in the game, right? I think
Yeah.
you
You
would
would like
like
kind of skip levels to ahead. Yep.
skip levels, right? So it's kind of like what we call life insurance with living benefits. It not only helps people like if they pass away, right? But like God forbid, something like that, like a critical illness, like cancer, heart attack, or stroke. Um, but it can also build cash value if you have a permanent policy that then you can use later on in life, right?
Mm.
So it's kind of like skipping maybe like a bad part in somebody's life where financially they don't even have to think about it, right?
Mhm.
Because,
Mhm.
okay, I know if something happens, I have that policy protecting me, right? But you're also building wealth for the future if you need it, right?
Okay. Very
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard that analogy used before as far as like level skipping to skip the issue, skip the damage, and being able to use that
Yeah.
later in life. So because like so it's starting to kind of click together because that's even myself, it's like, yeah, I've had health insurance before and that one seemed pretty easy, but like even life insurance, I was like, well, do I need it? Do I want it? Right.
Right, right. Because we all think we're invincible, right? Like especially we're younger. Like, oh, it's never gonna happen to me. And like the issue is that if we throw statistics at people, like I don't know, 2 out of 3 people, this will happen to them. What actually ends up happening is that that person creates like an optimism bias, where they're like, oh yeah, that I'm not gonna be that person, right?
Hmm.
But if people can see stories of somebody else going through that, and then they realize, hey, I don't have anything. Maybe I should do something, right? Um, so yeah, it's just, I thought that was an interesting fact there.
Yeah. So you're saying that having that kind of story, that kind of narrative is you're saying kind of resonates with them is much more powerful, right?
Yeah, yeah, because we never see ourselves in that situation. But we can see somebody else, like maybe we know somebody that has gone through something similar, right? And yeah, like health insurance, that's simple. Everybody knows, okay, I should have that because what if you get food poisoning, right? And you go to the hospital. I'd rather have insurance to help me pay for that,
Totally.
right?
But yep, that,
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
right? Like I say, the most expensive hotel you'll ever have is a hospital stay, right? So that's just like common sense. That's you don't have to really talk too much about it. People are like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'll get that. But when we talk about life insurance, that's more of an emotional sale.
Mm.
Um, and so there's a lot of things that we have to overcome. And I relate that a little bit to video games because sometimes there's levels that you try to pass and you can't get past this section, you start over and try to figure it out. And so life insurance can be like that a little bit for people where they're like, okay, I get it, but like I don't see why I need to do that, right? And so it might take two or three conversations for the person to really understand why they need it and why they should act now and not later. Because another thing that we don't think about is that it's not just our ability to work, but really our health is what allows us to buy life insurance. Because you have to pass this medical underwriting, a whole
Um,
questionnaire. Some companies say, oh, you got to do a medical exam, right? So if you're not able to pass that, you might be able to afford it, but the insurance company might not give it to you, right?
I see. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's really interesting. Yeah, because and I wanted to go back to the narrative, or I guess the story, right, to help with that kind of emotional sale, right? Because, and I think back into the gaming example, like because it makes sense because yeah, the statistics versus the story, right? Because you could have the statistics and very interesting with the optimism bias, right? It'd be like two-thirds of people this happens. Well, not me. I'm definitely in the third. It's like okay, but but having that story to really resonate and to connect with, because I think in a lot of games, some of the best games
Mm,
have a good story, right? Because gameplay is important, yes, absolutely. But like having kind of the reason to actually play, right? Like, to create this narrative, to create this story, even if it's something, yeah, I'll call it, very simple, right? Like Super Mario Brothers. It's save the princess, right?
right.
It's not just like here's a square and you're getting to this, move this to this, right? Even like some of the we talk about like the old school Atari stuff where it's just like you have a square and you have to move it here, and you're like, okay, it's like interesting, but let's have a little more. And then you got like the Nintendo that came along and was like, hey, let's have Super Mario Brothers. You're gonna save the princess. You're gonna have to like fight the Bowser and the big turtle thing, or you're like, okay,
Right.
now I'm starting to get it. And so games have just kind of evolved, I think, to have some of these great stories. So like some of the best games of all time, I think, are very interesting. That they're usually very powerful stories,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like so, one of the for those watching, right, I have a Legend of Zelda shirt, and I think Zelda 64, right, the Ocarina of Time, is considered one of, if not the best games of all time. And it's like, yes, it was very powerful for its time as far as the gameplay and having the world that you could explore and all this thing, but it was still a story. It was still like you had to overcome, evil, and you had to like, just to fight along, like that kind of underdog story to be able to conquer
Mm-hmm.
and beat the boss. And it was like, how powerful is that? Instead of just, go kill the thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember playing Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation.
Yeah.
And I remember that was like so interesting because you were like from the beginning, you were like involved with the radio and like, you had to go to like different channels to talk to different people.
Yep.
And then like at one point, like you had to change the CD and you were like, oh, like what happened here? Like, you know. But like you were totally, yeah, for sure, involved in the story. And so I think sometimes like talking about stories, like what story is it that you want your family or your whoever has to overtake a business, right? Like what story do you want them to tell? That they had to create a GoFundMe page for you because you didn't have life insurance and something happens, or that your family was able to overcome whatever it was, without having to rely on other people or whatever the case might be, right? Um, so I think that's interesting. But yeah, stories, I always say, definitely help sell whatever it is that you're selling, because like insurance is really an intangible product. It's not like a game that I can go and grab and put in my, well, now you download games, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a physical thing that you're purchasing, right? So yeah, we definitely have to story tell so that people can imagine, okay, what steps would that family have to take, or that business, if we're looking at like selling a business to another person, for example.
Mm. Because you're at that point, you're selling almost an experience at that point to say, like, here's a future story, here's a future experience that could happen. and here's what it would look like if you didn't have the
Right.
insurance, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's wow, that's really powerful because I think the level of experience and experience is something I think gamers are familiar with too. Experience points. And so just understanding on a fundamental level, like, this is the kind of experience I want to have with a game. This is kind of the experience I expect to have from, certain genres of game. It's one of the reasons I like like the RPGs and the JRPGs, where it's just like, yeah, I want an immersive story. I want to have cool characters I can connect with, and I want to have this sense of progression, whether it's, levels and, and XP and gear and all these things. And then when we get into the real world, not everything has that, right?
Right.
And so, like, trying to equate these kind of things, I think, is what's been difficult, right? And I think
Yeah.
we need, yeah, more of that. So that's really
Mhm.
interesting with the storytelling, I think, too.
Yeah, and I would say like in business in general, right? Like we can definitely equate playing video games to running a business, as in like being persistent and having setting goals, right? Like maybe you wanna, I don't know, like I remember saying again, Super Mario, sorry to everybody
Oh,
watching.
absolutely.
But like like a speed run, right? Like you want to beat the game within a certain time, or like, oh, not get the mushroom and see how far you can go into the game, right? So it's little things like that that I think develop a mentality of like, okay, I can set goals and achieve them by being consistent and persistent, but knowing what it is that you're going for, right? Because if you just play a game to play a game, like, yeah, sure, you can play, but at the end of the day, you didn't, maybe you got stuck on the same level, right? But um and especially those new games, right, that like, I don't know, to get to a certain world or something, you have to do things. I think that that builds good character in people at the end of the day.
That's, yeah, you touched on something really cool there as far as, so just trying to wrap my head around too, just how much we learn from games that we just don't even realize, right? And
Hmm.
just that sense of, whether it is, Mario Brothers, right? I love the examples there, that it's just simple progress to the game, and you're like, why am I playing at the end of the day? Because one of the things I like to say is that, I like to ask that question, be like, why do we play games? It's like, well, because they're fun. It's like, yes, but I think we can go deeper than that, right? And I like to ask, like, why do you think games are fun? So maybe a question for you. I'm curious, why did you think Super Mario Brothers was fun?
Back then it's not like today where you had so many options. So,
Given the
so it
limited
was
options, yep.
something, you know, but it was something fun to do, and I personally have always liked the challenge. So I remember like a friend came over and he's like, "Oh, if you jump on this turtle, you get like 500 lives, or I don't know, like infinite lives, I guess, in the game."
Yep.
And I saw that and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's no fun because you'll always beat the game because you have infinite lives." Or like that Konami code on
Yep.
Contra. I
Yep.
think for that one you really do need that because there's no way you're passing that
That
game
game was punishing, yeah.
without that, right? Um, so it's kind of like back then, yeah, it was just something fun to do. But as you play, you develop other skills that you don't realize are useful later in life. And I think adults today a lot of times, yeah, they spend hours playing video games, but it could be a creative outlet, something fun to do, and even social, right? Because you communicate with somebody a lot of times, right, over
Yeah.
the internet or something. Yeah.
Especially the MMOs, as they call, like the
Uh-huh.
massively multiplayer games, right? Your World of Warcraft, your Final Fantasy 14, these kind of games where, yeah, you work with other people, right? And
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
playing constantly with other people, and like, so they're always there. So having that level of communication or teamwork is,
Mhm.
it's not only
Yeah,
important, it's just
that's
kind of
crucial.
automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, nobody can live in the world by themselves, and you need to know how to communicate with others, different characters, different personalities, and for sure, I could see that helping as well. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so having that level, it sounds like you had that sense of challenge And one of the other and the other aspect, the other side of that, right, is the sense of achievement, right? When you actually won, right? When you say you beat Mario 1, right?
Right.
Which not everybody's done, right? It's
Right.
old school enough. Like even back then, like even growing up then too, it's like not everybody beat that game because it was, I
Mhm.
mean, it was hard, right? Like
Yeah.
so just trying to get through it, it was just like its own challenge. And I think that sense of accomplishment and that sense of achievement is something that everybody wants and craves. So that's one aspect of gaming I think that I think attracted you to that, and then definitely attracted me too. Just say, yeah, how can I achieve more? How can I feel accomplished? Especially when you're young and there's not a lot of things that you can do. And you're like, how is a, like an 8-year-old, how do I feel accomplished? And you're like, and you
Right.
don't necessarily think about it in those terms at the time, but it's just like, that feeling of winning you definitely want. And games is a great outlet for that, right?
Yeah.
That's
For
one
sure.
of the reasons I love games and especially the RPGs and the adventure games like Zelda, where I mean, whether it's Zelda or Final Fantasy, especially, it's like, what better achievement is there for an 8-year-old than saving the world?
Hmm.
Granted, it's in a video game, but still.
Yeah. Good enough, right? Yeah. I've never
Exactly.
played Final Fantasy, but I've heard that the soundtrack. I play the piano, so like people are like, "Oh, do you know that?" I'm like, "No, I don't know," but I've heard it and it sounds really great. So I think that's also interesting how like music and all of that is also like a big part of video games. Hmm.
It really is. And I have, we could talk hours on that too, where it's just, yeah, just the,
Right.
the video game music is just so powerful. And I love those kind of like reactions of people that don't play video games and they hear video game music and they're a lot of times just stunned and they're like, wow, this is really beautiful. Who wrote this? Like, well, it was by this guy who does video game music. And they're like, what?
Right.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
and I'm glad you mentioned the Final Fantasy music too, because that Nobu Uematsu is the composer's name, and he's very famous for the Final Fantasy music. He's famous in the video game world as like one of the best video game composers as a result. Uh, so yeah, so if there's any video game music to learn on the piano, I was like, yes, definitely recommend.
I guess I should finally add it to my request, I guess.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I would recommend.
good to know.
And because there's so many of the Final Fantasies too, so like, and that's
Yeah.
what's amazing doing that kind of stuff is that it's just like a legacy at that point, right? So like, and I love that idea of like building your legacy through gaming, right?
Hmm.
And so he's this amazing, well-known composer in video games, right? And so the video game industry just absolutely loves him. And it's like, yes, it's spilled over out of that too, but and that's where he started. And it's just like, how powerful is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, legacy is always a key topic that we discuss as well with like life insurance because that's really what it is. It's leaving a legacy for the next generation, or maybe if you have a charity that you really like supporting, right? You can always donate money through life insurance as well. So, I think that that's interesting how like video games can be a legacy, especially for the people creating it and doing that, as well as the gamers. Like they're super popular now on YouTube and like all these live streams, right? So like who
Yep,
knows what that could lead to as well. Hmm.
exactly right. And there's so many just players, right? That just that get famous enough for certain games or for certain things that you tend to remember just for these kind of epic moments that they have, or just like their personalities or whatever it has. So yeah, I'm very very happy with kind of the way the industry has been going as far as yeah more celebrating more even the players too, like you
Hmm.
said.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love the legacy as it ties into life insurance too, because that's you're absolutely right. We talked a little bit about kind of the future experience, right? But you're right. Another name for that is just legacy. It's just like
Yeah.
what is going to happen after the fact, and it's like kind of leaving that legacy. So that makes so much sense to put in that context. So I love that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because, a lot of times people think, oh, whatever I have in my bank account or I'm gonna pass on my business, but like, hey, how do you know like those kids want to continue that business, right? When we're talking to a business owner. Or how do you know what you have is not going to be taxed and then what are they left with, right? So life insurance definitely it's a great way to transfer wealth, whether you have it or not, because it's not that you're paying month by month for this benefit. Somebody could pass away 2, 3 months after buying a policy, and the insurance company will pay the full death benefit, right? So if your death benefit was $1 million and you only have $30 in the bank, as an example, right? Your family's gonna get that death benefit, right? Obviously, as long as everything looks good. So
Yep. Got it. So okay, so is there anything else, I guess, related to the life insurance that you guys, I'll say, like that you learned or maybe even understood more clearly because of gaming, because of, whether it's Super Mario Brothers that you can equate to the life insurance?
let me think. I would say maybe like power ups.
Hmm.
Um, would be almost like riders on life insurance policies, right? Like, uh, you have a basic policy. I don't know. Let's just say you bought a house, so now you're gonna buy a life insurance for 30 years to cover that mortgage. That's 250,000, right? Let's just say that's the average house today, right? Um, and that's good to start, but you can always add additional things to that policy. Like you can add a waiver of premium rider, which would be like a power up because what that does is if somebody were to become permanently disabled, that policy will continue paying for itself. So the person is disabled, they don't have to worry about it, and the policy's being paid for. And if God forbid they pass away, the family would receive the death benefit. And that's something very minimal to add to a policy, but you need to buy it when you're applying for coverage, right? The other thing I think a lot of times people might overlook, and it's also something that doesn't cost much to add to the policy, is like a children term rider. And what that does is it gives life insurance to all the kids that you have, as long as they medically qualify, of course. Um, and what this does is, let's say that policy is, and let's say it's like 10,000 for each child. Um, what happens is when they turn 18, that child now has the option to get their own policy, and the good thing is they don't have to prove any medical underwriting, which is good because you never know what could happen along the way, right? And we're not really looking at it like, oh, if they pass away, you're going to get $10,000 as an example. It's more so to protect insurability of that child, because
Mm.
then they can convert that, depending on the policy, a certain amount, like 10,000 times 10 or whatever it is, right? So, um, and the other power up I would say that's really good to look at is like depending if you're gonna buy a term or a permanent, that's more like, what video game do I want to play, right? What experience do I want to have? A term is great for something like to cover a mortgage, which is something short term. And then permanent is good if you want to always pay the same price your entire life and build cash value that you can use later on in life, right? So they're two different um experiences, I would say, but they each have a purpose and a reason for
Mm.
getting.
Okay. Yeah, having that specific reason, having that specialization, right? It's really, really powerful, I think, and really important. And we
Yeah,
see that in games all the time too, having a specific specialization or class to be able to use the certain abilities. So
yeah, interesting.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else you think that we've missed at this point? Or
No, I think we're good. I can't think of anything else I could equate video games to life insurance
yeah,
or health insurance. It's definitely been interesting to think of it outside of the box, how we can equate pretty much any topic to insurance somehow, right?
yeah, exactly.
So
And that's
yeah,
yeah. So that's part of what I love doing here is just just taking these different topics, or whether it's something a little more complex, something that people aren't used to, and like if we put it into video game terminology, makes it more easy to understand. right? So I'm
Hmm.
I'm glad you could help us here with that today, Lorena. This has been fantastic. So, and I guess where can people learn more about you and kind of what you do?
Sure. On social media, it's MALMINS 22. And then they can just Google my name on LinkedIn, Lorena Tomasini. And yeah, I'm all over social media somewhere. So yeah.
All right, perfect. And we'll have some links for you guys down in the description too, so you can definitely check out Lorena. And if you want to learn more, this has been fantastic. And guys, if you want to learn more about taking those gaming skills and transferring them into whether it's your work life, your personal life, and just trying to get more out of life using your gaming, you can absolutely do that. Definitely check me out at dragonmorexp.com. Start your journey there today. And one last question for Lorena before we go. I think we know what it is, but I always ask everyone, what is your favorite video game?
Oh, well, I have this handy coat. It's a coaster that looks like a cartridge.
Okay. It's a
of
coaster for the cartridge. Okay.
It's a coaster. I did like a party once and we just played like old games and I'm like, what could be something fun to do? So I just have it, here in my
That's
office.
awesome. So the
Uh,
original Super Mario Brothers.
the original Super Mario Brothers. Uh-huh.
And yeah, custom made coaster too to look like the cartridge. That's super fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I kind of figured, but yeah, it's good to know. So the original, right? So not the Super Nintendo one, but the original. So
I mean, we're gonna be like those people that are like, oh, if it's not vinyl, I'm not listening to it. You know, Nintendo, but Super Nintendo's all right.
Super
Yeah.
Nintendo's all right. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again, Lorena. This has been fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And everybody listening and watching, thank you so much for listening and watching. And guys, remember, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.